Hey there, and welcome back to Utility Sports. In today's video, we are covering the Chicago Bulls and their offseason preview. There's a lot of big decisions to be made in Chicago for the 6th seed Bulls. Last year, obviously, it did not end how they wanted it to. However, there's a couple of changes that they can make that can really catapult this team to be true contenders in the Eastern Conference this upcoming season. If you are new to the channel, hit that subscribe button if you are new, as you don't want to miss any of our NBA content. So we will go ahead and jump right into it here, looking at the 2021-2022 season for your Chicago Bulls. Now, they were 46-36 on the year. This is a team that was an absolute, wrecking ball during the regular season. Obviously, it did not go how they planned it to go in that postseason. They actually struggled a lot during the regular season, however, against teams with a winning record. Now, this was a common problem for the Bulls, and they weren't really able to find some traction against those really tough and competitive teams in that Eastern Conference. Now, that's not to say that they were a bad team. However, they just struggled to, really elevate to some of these other upper echelon teams in that Eastern Conference. And then we saw it against the Milwaukee Bucks. Now, the Milwaukee Bucks were super, super tough. In that series, they obviously were very, very physical. And that made it super tough on the Bulls, in my opinion, to hang with them throughout the entire series. They did end up stealing one game in Milwaukee in that series. However, they ultimately lost the series 4-1. So not an ideal playoff run for the Bulls. The expectations were super high. This is a franchise that is starving for more playoff success. And they definitely thought they were going to see a little bit more out of their Bulls, a little more competitive during that postseason. Now, let's take a look at some of the bright spots. DeMar DeRozan had his highest scoring output season ever at the age of 32. That is incredible. He really found a rhythm. This guy was absolutely dominant all year long. And it really shows that, he is a true leader and he can be a winning player in this league. This team definitely took a major turnaround this season. A lot of credit to Billy Donovan and the staff. Now, I know a lot of people were calling for Billy Donovan's head, but at the end of the day, I mean, they had, they were 10 games above 500. They made it to the postseason. They looked really good for the most part in that regular season. However, I think that, you got to give some credit to this staff and, the team that they've put together. Now, another thing that was a bright spot to me was Patrick Williams' growth. And now, granted, he had only played in 17 games this season, but Patrick Williams was phenomenal in those games that he played. He averaged 9 points a game. He shot over 50% from three. So a lot of credit to this staff because I think his offensive game is growing. We already knew when the Bulls had selected him where he was defensively. Now, offensively, Patrick Williams is a player that is going to continue to grow. And that's exactly where the upside was. He was a really good defensive player coming out as a Florida State product. And then now, offensively, we're going to see that game continue to grow, continue to rise. A lot of credit to, Patrick Williams and his offseason that he had put together before the 2021 season. Definitely saw some of the growth for him. And then finally, this was a winning product on the floor for the Chicago Bulls, a team that struggled over the last couple of seasons to generate winning seasons and being truly competitive. This Bulls team was a little bit different. DeMar DeRozan was a big reason why his 27 points a game was phenomenal for this team. So you have to like a lot of what you had seen from the Chicago Bulls at this point. This is a good competitive team that's got a lot of nice pieces on it. However, they can get better for sure. Now, some of the key decisions. Now, do they keep Zach Lavine? And the obvious answer to that is yes, if you can keep him, you need to retain him. I think that every Bulls fan would say that we need to hold on to Zach Lavine, and I think that's true. I think he's an integral part of this franchise, face of the franchise, a guy that they should continue to build around for the future. So no doubt. But there's a lot of other suitors out there that very well could be, going after Zach Lavine. And I think that the Sacramento Kings are a team that you have to be watching for, in my opinion. This is a team that last free agency period had offered him as well, but I think they're going to do it once again. So Zach Lavine's a name I want to be watching, heading into the offseason. Also, do they extend Vucevic? Now, Vucevic is heading into his contract season this year, which is kind of crazy to think. This is the contract year for him. So are they going to go ahead and extend him? I think, obviously he was a big part in what they did this past season. He's a very, very good post-scoring center and a guy that you can really trust in terms of offensive output on a night in, night out basis. So I think Vucevic being extended would be wise for the Bulls at this point, especially since you had given up draft capital to acquire him. Another thing is, can you push all of the chips forward heading into this year? Now, I think they should be very aggressive, in my opinion. When you look at the Chicago Bulls, you have to be aggressive in this Eastern Conference. I don't think you can head into another season where you look at it like, all right, we're just going to be pretty content with the roster we had put out last year. I think they have to actually be a little aggressive, in my general opinion, just because of how competitive this Eastern Conference is, how great some of these teams at the top are. Looking at the Boston Celtics, looking at the Milwaukee Bucks, those are very, very tough teams. You have the Miami Heat as well. Those are some tough teams to try to beat in that Eastern Conference. And I think this roster isn't to the point where you could be totally satisfied and think that you're going to be able to kind of, change it and make it out of that first round without really addressing anything. So I think that is something they're going to be looking for. They have the 18th overall pick as well. They have free agent moves that they can make. So there's a lot of different routes that they can take. And then finally, now the main subject of this video here for them is, do they pull a trade on the trigger on a trade for a Rudy Gobert deal? Now, I think that this is a very real possibility. There has been reports that the Bulls are interested in dealing for Rudy Gobert. Now, this is huge. This is absolutely huge. And you have to consider, what is it really going to take for Rudy Gobert to be a Chicago Bull at the end of the day? And I don't really, we'll go ahead and address that right now, because this is a major move that the Chicago Bulls could pull off. Now, we have to consider, where does this sit money-wise? Rudy Gobert is making approximately $38 million next year. So they're going to have to get close to that number. Vucevic is a player that they're going to have to deal, in my opinion. I think that in that deal, sending him back to Utah would allow Utah to be competitive at that center spot. A guy that can really score the basketball from the center position. So Utah getting him would make a lot of sense. Now, this is the unfortunate part for the Bulls, is you're going to have to sacrifice a little bit of your depth to improve at that center spot. So not only are you sending out Vucevic, you're likely going to have to send out a guy like Patrick Williams, and also potentially, Colby White, maybe Troy Brown. But in order to match money, that's where you need to get to. You also have to give them an incentive to make this trade. Utah is trying to reconfigure their roster, and the Chicago Bulls are really trying to push the chips forward and be super competitive. Now, this is more under the assumption that they're able to retain Zach Lavine. So that's the part that you have to consider here. Obviously, if they aren't able to retain Zach Lavine, this entire outlook changes, and this deal probably does not get done. However, Rudy Gobert, if you insert him onto a team with Zach Lavine, DeMar DeRozan, and then himself, who is a huge defensive anchor, I think this team is very dangerous in that Eastern Conference. Granted, you have to give up a guy like Patrick Williams, like Colby White, in addition to Vucevic. However, Rudy Gobert's defensive presence is phenomenal, and this would instantly likely turn them into a top 10 defense in the entire league, which would be absolutely crazy, looking at what Rudy Gobert does from a defensive impact. Now, what picks do they have? They have pick 18 in the draft. They do not have a second round selection this year. So we're going to take a look at some of the draft needs for them. Forwards with some physicality. I think when you look at the Eastern Conference and guys that you're having to compete up against, you have Giannis, you have guys like PJ Tucker for the Miami Heat. Boston's physical. And I look at it from the sense of, you need some guys with physicality, and especially if you're going to play a team like Milwaukee, you got to be able to be physical. Perimeter shooting is always important, and I think the Bulls could use a little bit of an extra boost there. So looking for some perimeter shooting. maybe a 3-and-D wing would go a long ways. And then finally, some shot creation. In my opinion, I think that they could use another shot creator off the bench, a guy that can be a true spark plug for this team. And I think there's a lot of that in the draft here. Now, the nice thing is they got some optionality here at pick 18. Looking at Tari Eason from LSU, this is a guy who's a terrific defender, long, lengthy, 6'7" forward, guy that moves his feet very well. His shot is going to need some work at the next level, but when you look at a moldable project player, Tari Eason is a terrific prospect. Jeremy Sohan from Baylor is another guy that is a 6'9" forward that is very, very great defensively. Phenomenal out in space, one of the top defenders in the entire draft. Now, that is more of a dream scenario if the Bulls are able to land him, because I think that gives you that option if you do want to trade Patrick Williams. These first couple of guys here, like EJ Liddell as well, could be a really, really good plug and play opportunity. So yes, you would be losing a guy like Patrick Williams, and I get he is a terrific player, but there are some great guys that you could potentially replace him with here in the draft. And to honestly end up with a guy like Rudy Gobert, to me, makes a lot of sense. Looking for more of a shot creating type, I look at Jaden Hardy from the G League. And I think when you look at a guy that can score the basketball, Jaden Hardy fits the bill. And then we also have Agbaji from Kansas. And I look at him as, a very, very seasoned veteran at the college ball level, can shoot the three ball very well and effectively. So I think Agbaji is another player that you could be looking at for your Chicago Bulls. Now, finally, let's take a look at some of the free agent targets. You have some nice shot creation here from Trey Burke from the Dallas Mavericks. Fell out of favor with this team, during the postseason for sure. However, this could be a guy that can, have some high scoring output games off the bench. Victor Oladipo is another interesting player to me. Was once considered a very, very good two-way player. Just isn't the same player that he used to be. However, he can be an effective player on a decent contract. Victor Oladipo defensively still is impressive to me. Offensively, hopefully he can continue to kind of work that out. And, he's had some stints with injuries, and sometimes it just takes players a little while to get back from that. Josh Jackson from the Kings, another player that you wouldn't really think about talking about in a positive light. The former 4th overall pick of the Phoenix Suns has bounced around the league quite a bit, but I think Josh Jackson as a defender could really help out a team. And then Jalen Smith from Indiana. You look at Jalen Smith and what he was able to do, kind of turning around his career a little bit. The 10th overall pick by the Phoenix Suns. This is a player that was picked ahead of where he was projected to go. Expectations were super lofty for him, but he ended up calming down and figuring it out there. And I think Jalen Smith could be an effective player. Now, next season's outlook, I think they should be looking at finishing as a top 3 seed. In terms of if they go ahead, push their chips forward, trade for a guy like Rudy Gobert, to me, that makes a lot of sense. And I think that they should make it at least to the second round. I do believe if you're going to be super aggressive, you have another year of DeMar DeRozan, Zach Lavine as well. This should be enough to get this team to the next level, get them at least to the second round and, potentially further. And looking at Ayo Dosunmu, hopefully he continues to take leaps and bounds, because this is a player that was definitely producing more than where he was drafted, what the expectations were for him. So really, really awesome to see the Illinois product just, producing at a high level at the NBA. And now looking at him potentially as a key role player for this team moving forward is absolutely huge, considering how little of draft capital that they had to stick into him. And then finally, increase the overall offensive efficiency, to me, from 15th in the league is important. When you're a team like the Chicago Bulls, I think they got to continue to get better offensively. They have 2 great scorers in Zach Lavine and DeMar DeRozan, and I'd like to see the rest of the team kind of, hopefully they can mold it a little bit more, add some scoring punch, and, eventually get into that top 10. So those are the goals for me for the Chicago Bulls next year. Thanks a lot for tuning in. Hopefully you did enjoy the video. Hit that subscribe button if you are new. Also, leave a like on today's video if you did enjoy the content. We appreciate you stopping by, and we can't wait to see you guys in the next video.